Hi, welcome to History Doodles. Today we're going to be talking about Attila the Hun, one of the most feared people in all of history. So without further ado, let's get into it. This is the Feast of Attila, and it's a depiction of an incredible meeting between the Romans and a man called by some the Scourge of God, Attila the Hun, who was painted by Hungarian artist Mór Than in 1870 and hangs today in the Hungarian National Gallery in Budapest. Attila is shown here, and his name has been associated for centuries with ruthlessness, barbarity, and violence. Some of that is warranted, and some is an exaggeration by those who got to pass down the history of the Huns, the Romans. The Huns themselves didn't write a word of their own history. The event that Than is painting here comes from the writings of an ancient historian named Priscus, who journeyed to Attila's court and recorded first-hand details of a banquet that he attended. And that account ends up being extremely important because before this, the Huns were so terrifying and foreign to the Romans that accounts of them read like scripts of a horror film. Take, for example, the writings of the contemporary historian Ammianus Marcellinus, who wrote about the Huns when they first showed up, saying, quote, "The Huns exceed any definition of savagery. They have compact, sturdy limbs and thick necks. They are so hideously ugly and distorted that they could be mistaken for two-legged beasts or for those images crudely hewn from tree stumps." He thought that they were beastly tree stumps, complete savages. So why were the original accounts of the Huns so horrifying? Well, the Huns were a nomadic group of people from the Eurasian steppe, and they are best known to history for their sudden appearance in Eastern Europe in the 4th century AD. The Romans had never heard of the Huns before, and when they showed up, they caused total chaos. Those who stood up to them were easily defeated in battle, and then easily subjugated, killed, or enslaved. And when the Huns made it to the Roman border, they preyed on poorly guarded Roman towns. And for decades, the Huns would terrorize the Eastern Roman Empire and leave towns in their way just annihilated. The unlucky people in their path were enslaved or killed, and it was a horror show. The Huns would only go back to the Hungarian plain once they had extracted a huge sum of gold. And this was a real problem for the Romans, and it went on for a long time. The historian Christopher Kelly calls it, quote, "a protection racket on a grand scale." And then in 434 AD, Attila and his brother Bleda came to power. Now we don't hear as much about Bleda in the history books because Attila had him killed. But the two consolidated power amongst the Huns, and with Attila calling the shots, the danger that the Huns posed dramatically increased because they became a unified people and an empire that couldn't just easily be bought off. And that's where another interesting element of this painting comes into place. And that's the presence of an envoy from Constantinople that's sitting right here at the foot of Attila. These two men are the scholar and historian Priscus and the Roman officer Maximinus. The two were sent on a mission to deliver a letter from the emperor of the Eastern Roman Empire, Theodosius II. Priscus's writings from this journey allow us to see a much more three-dimensional version of Attila and the Huns. The things he recorded would be surprising to know for those who saw the Huns as inhuman monsters, like that these nomadic people were putting down roots and building legit towns, that Attila himself was much more rational and humble human being than what the Romans had expected, and that he ate simple food from a wooden plate, and that the Huns even had an operational Roman bathhouse, which showed they were advancing in, culture, technology, that kind of stuff. Although the bathhouse did require a enslaved Roman to operate it. Priscus's histories today still exist in fragmentary form. And another interesting element of the text is that it later reveals that the whole mission he was sent on was a plot by the Romans to assassinate Attila. He was not informed about this secret scheme at the time, but the details are kind of like a ancient version of the CIA's attempt to kill Fidel Castro in the 1960s. One last interesting thing in this painting I want to point out is the boy sitting with Attila. This is one of Attila's sons named Elek, and he would succeed Attila in 453 AD. Attila would die unexpectedly on his wedding night. It wasn't his first wedding, but the new bride and him were celebrating and partying it all night, and after he went to bed, he didn't wake up. The next day, his poor bride had to deal with a dead husband in her bed, and who was bleeding from the nose, and it devastated everyone. And after he passed away, the Huns never had the same level of leadership again, and they would quickly fragment. Elek would see the empire of the Huns collapse, and he would die fighting a year later at the Battle of Ndeo in 454 AD. And as suddenly and mysteriously as they came, they went away, and new groups fought for control of this territory. So going back to the original painting, I find this to be such a great visual representation of the Huns and their empire, not just as a terrifying group of people, but also a really important place with a lot of complicated things going on. It doesn't show them as monsters or barbarians, but Than is conveying the strength and power of a people that he saw as the forebears to the Hungarians in what he was painting in the 19th century. It's a vivid and larger than life painting, and I think it's really cool. And that's it. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, it'd be really helpful if you can like and subscribe. I hope to see you next time.